So while all of my many duplicates are off repairing my ship, a task which is taking significantly longer than I thought since they're all just as lazy as I am, I've been working on something pretty special that I think is going to help the channel out drastically. My own artificially intelligent companion, Karen. Say hello, Karen.
Hello.
Can you guess why I called her that? I named her Karen because she's a computer, and we're going to be spending so much time together that it's like she's my wife. It's a SpongeBob reference. Yeah, I don't think it's funny either. Anyway, to test out her AI, we've been running simulations on something that I've been wondering about for quite a while in regards to Steven Universe and where exactly the show might be going. Now, I personally think that White Diamond is going to prove to be an enemy who Steven can't reason with and make peace with and make friends with in the way that he tends to make peace and make friends with all of his enemies. Like you guys know as well as I do that even characters like Jasper, I feel, are eventually going to be allies with Steven. And in part because of that, I do feel that White Diamond is being set up as the final villain of the show. In fact, I'm so close to entirely sure that she's the final villain that I haven't been able to envision for myself who might be the villain of the show after her if there are going to be additional villains after her. So I set Karen to the task of crunching the numbers and determining some groups who might pose a threat in the future of the series, beyond this current arc involving White Diamond. And her ideas were pretty interesting. I'm going to be overviewing 4 potential future villains in this video, 3 of whom are pictured in the cover image for this video, but one of whom I couldn't really figure out how to depict in image form, so that one's just gonna have to be a surprise.
Spoilers, it's the second one.
If you paid attention to the figures standing opposite the crystal gems in that cover image, you can probably guess at some of the places where I'm going to be going in this video. So let's briefly go over who each group is and why Karen and I think they could be potential threats. And yes, the order does matter here. I'm going to be going from which one I find least interesting to the one that I find most interesting, i.e. the one that I'd pick. But honestly, my hope is that if all of these groups do exist within the universe of the show, that all of them will be given at least some focus at some point. Firstly, let's talk about Sneeple, the group that I personally would find the least interesting in this role. I've done a video about this relatively recently. I'll try to remember to link it up in the corner thingy. So I'm not going to get into this one too much, but I do think that with Ronaldo's track record for saying things offhand and them being true, it is technically possible that he's not as full of shit as I think he is and that the Sneeple are actually real. I think, though, that even if he is right about the Sneeple being a thing which exists, he's going to end up being wrong about the specifics of who and what they are. After all of the theories that he came up with about the corrupted gems were very off in terms of specifics. But I do think it's possible that there is a group out there analogous to the reptile people that conspiracy theorists in the real world theorize about who could eventually become a threat in the show if the show goes on long enough. Still, this theory to me really feels like a joke theory, a gag theory built into the series itself. So I really doubt it. That doesn't mean that there aren't other aliens out there other than the gems that we have to worry about. It's also possible that the race that originally created the gems is still out there somewhere, and that some event in the show, something that Steven and his group do or something that the Diamonds do, might signal to them that gems are still out and about throughout the universe, or may renew their interest in their creations and lead them to re-engage with the gems in some way. If Steven really is able to make an ally of Homeworld, as I've theorized in the past, then a threat like this could be one that he faces with Homeworld at his back. It's possible that this alien species may return wanting to, I don't know, force gems to do its bidding again or something like that. And that Steven and his allies will have to really put themselves to the test, trying to either make peace with these people and prove to them that gems have become their own independent society at this point, or defeat them, one or the other. And I do think that there would be a chance for peace in this scenario, as a society advanced enough to design beings as advanced as the gems, I would imagine would have to be pretty progressive. Unless my old theory that gem society has developed into something contrary to what their creators wanted turns out to be wrong, and the species which created them has just as militaristic a society as Homeworld is. But that would just end up feeling like Homeworld 2.0, which would be boring, and I don't think the crew would really go there. So at the end of the day, I don't really think it's going to be this alien government which is the next villain of the show any more than I think it's going to be the Sneeple. But there is another government that I think could potentially pose a threat to the Crystal Gems. And that's the US government, or its equivalent in Steven's world. Maybe not even just them, maybe like a Steven Universe version of the United Nations or something. After all, we don't really have any reason to believe that there isn't some overarching government presence in Steven's version of the United States. And yet, all kinds of horrifying stuff happens in Beach City, and no one has ever come to investigate. No one from outside the town has ever come to investigate. Now, granted, the crew have said that people on Steven's Earth do have some knowledge of the gems and their activities, but it's never really been clear if that extends beyond the borders of Beach City, and even if it does, it makes what I'm thinking here even more likely. I have suggested elsewhere that maybe the United States government stays out of Beach City's affairs because they have some understanding with the Crystal Gems, that they leave the Crystal Gems alone to do their own thing, to live in peace, and in exchange, the Crystal Gems deal with any gem-related threats to the planet. But those gem-related threats have escalated recently, and they've even taken the characters to other sovereign nations. So it is possible that the government might rethink that arrangement and come for the Crystal Gems in some capacity. They might even have weaponry that's effective against them, weaponry specifically designed in case they ever had to come down on the Crystal Gems as a threat. This is another one that I feel will come to a peaceful solution if it comes about, since I can't imagine them showing gem on human violence in any serious way in this series. But I still think it would be really interesting if things went this direction. They could even spin something like the arrangement wasn't between the government and the Crystal Gems, but the government and Rose, maybe? And that the other Crystal Gems didn't even really know about it? Which would tie into the whole Rose keeps secrets thing that keeps popping up. And it could stir up some very personal drama for Steven himself. It seems like maybe Steven isn't even technically a citizen of the country. Maybe they'll shoot for some kind of social commentary and have the US government try to deport Steven to Homeworld or something. And he'll have to prove that he deserves to live here. But the possibility that I find the most interesting of all is that the threat will come from other gems, but gems which aren't associated with Homeworld, gems which aren't part of that harmful system. I think it would be really cool if we found out that there are other Crystal Gems out there, other Crystal Gems who managed to, in one way or another, survive the final attack against Rose and her forces on Earth. Maybe they realized what was happening and so stowed away on Homeworld ships or something. Gems who have been out there hiding away on Homeworld-controlled planets, much like the off-colors on Homeworld itself. Their spirits broken because, from their perspective, it would seem like all of their allies are dead. Until one day they hear of renewed activity from the Crystal Gems and decide to make their way back to Earth and reunite with Rose Quartz. And at first, everything will seem fine, but then Steven, being Steven, will reveal to them that Rose was actually Pink Diamond, and because they weren't as close to her, that revelation will cause conflict between the two groups. It would be a really interesting way to introduce a new group of villains who are sympathetic, who we know aren't bad people, who Steven will feel some connection with and some responsibility for, whose very existences tie into many of the ongoing plot lines of the show. Here we have old Crystal Gems who were thought lost, who are really only different from the characters who we've been following all this time in that they can't forgive Rose so easily, who the main characters are reluctant to fight against, who have the potential to be deep and nuanced as characters, and this is once again another potential plotline which ties into all of the Rose Quartz stuff that the show likes to keep bringing up and expanding upon. Maybe it will be through a group like this that the writers on the show address some of the points that I've made. That Rose, if she hadn't kept her identity a secret, might have had more options during the war, more options to advance her agenda and protect the people who she claimed to care about. I think it's even possible that the villain in the upcoming Steven Universe movie could be someone from a faction like this, a remnant of the original Crystal Gems, who still follows closely some version of their original agenda. And again, if I'm right that Steven is going to make an ally of Homeworld at some point before this would potentially happen, this splinter group of Crystal Gems might even find fault in that and oppose the Crystal Gems that we've been following up to this point, for that reason as well, in part. I just feel that introducing a villain group like this one opens up so many potential storylines that I don't really know how the show would explore otherwise. As per usual, I'd like to know, what do you guys think? Do you think that White Diamond is going to be the final boss of the entire show? Or do you think that there's going to be some other villain introduced after her, and if so, who? Who do you think they'll be? And don't just limit yourself to my ideas.
They were mostly mine, actually.
Karen, shush. Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord, link in the description. But either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.